In December of 2019, an online story about Willie Simmons went viral. People around the world were stunned to learn that Mr. Simmons had served over 38 years in prison for a single robbery he committed in 1982. Simmons was sentenced to a mandatory life without parole under Alabama's draconian Habitual Felony Offender Act because he had 3 prior property crimes on his record. Celebrities and politicians expressed outrage. His story was picked up by major media outlets, and millions of people around the world signed petitions to free Mr. Simmons. So why is he still locked up in an Alabama prison? Simmons is one of over 500 men and women serving the maximum punishment available because of this outdated law. Alabama's Habitual Felony Offender Act, or HFOA, is a merciless measure passed in the 1970s and has long been considered the harshest so-called 3 strikes law in the nation. It imposes longer penalties each time someone commits a felony, and for years mandated a life without parole sentence for anyone with 3 prior crimes on their record who was convicted of a Class A felony, like robbery, burglary, or even manufacturing of a controlled substance. The law meant Willie Simmons, convicted of a single robbery that involved no physical injury, was sentenced to die in prison because of 3 prior convictions for grand larceny, a nonviolent property crime. The law did not care if a decade or more had passed between the crimes or if all the charges resulted from the same incident. Judges had 0 discretion. So what did this do to Alabama's prison population? It exploded, growing over 400% in 40 years to become the most overcrowded in the nation, largely because of the bloated sentences imposed under HFOA. In the population that includes Willie Simmons, over 70% are now older than 50. In fact, during the last 40 years, the number of incarcerated people over the age of 50 in Alabama has increased by 3,000%. Research shows longer sentences do not equal increased public safety, and the cost of incarcerating a person beyond 50 doubles due to healthcare needs, not to mention the terrible human cost of removing people from their families and communities for life. In recent years, Alabama has passed newer sentencing guidelines that would not impose a terminal sentence on Willie Simmons if he was convicted today. But lawmakers did not make them retroactive, which means anyone sentenced under HFOA, including Mr. Simmons and hundreds of others, is stuck in a dead-end sentence. Alabama needs real sentencing reform, and that means doing away with the habitual offender law for good and creating pathways out of prison for Willie Simmons and so many other Alabamians.